Hello everyone, Kenty Tiger here with Bengali Engineering and Play. We are back in Space Engineers, and somebody had asked me if I could do a kind of a description tutorial thought process thing on base building. So, base building it is. So, here's the scenario. You are lost in space, and all you have is your little miner. So this is my little miner. I love this guy. Totally overpowered, but hey, gotta have fun, right? So you have your miner. Now, the good thing about mining is the beginning of everything. Why do I say that? Because you're lost in space. You need materials. Materials you gotta have. If you don't have materials, it doesn't matter what else you have. It just doesn't. So if you're trying to survive, you have to have materials. If you don't have those materials, you're not going to go anywhere. Where can we find the materials? Well, asteroids. So there's 2 asteroids over there. There's another asteroid there. Another asteroid there. Another asteroid there. Another asteroid. So there's asteroids everywhere. Asteroids have typically 3 different materials in them. Sometimes 2, but usually 3. Maybe only trace elements of the 3rd one, but usually you'll find something. So here's another thought process when it comes to asteroids, and I know we're getting off the script here from base building, and you briefly saw something over there, and we'll get into that in a minute. But asteroids. Asteroids in Space Engineers are procedurally generated. I know this kind of strays away from survival and all that sort of thing, but the realities are we're playing a game, so there are limitations to this game. You could look at this asteroid, any given asteroid, you can determine what's in it, save your game, close your game down, come back in, and you know what? It's no longer those things. Why is it no longer those things? Because they are procedurally generated. So the only way to actually turn a procedurally generated thing, asteroids in this case, into something real, which is to say, is now voxels, real voxels, saved in your save game, is to do something to that asteroid. So take your drill, take your miner, whatever, bump into it, damage it, put a hole in it. Doesn't matter. Change it. The second you change it, that asteroid becomes real. It's part of your save game, and what's in it is in it forever. So make a hole in it, figure out what's in it, GPS coordinate it, GPS mark it, and then now you know. Okay, so materials. So once you have your materials, which your miner can get for you, then you need a way to process those. So how do we do that? Well, we need a refinery. Once you have a refinery, we take those raw materials, whatever it happens to be, any of the ores, whether it be uranium ore, cobalt, whatever, doesn't matter. Our refinery changes that into ingots, usable materials. So we go from raw material to usable material. The next stage is our assembler, which is going to take those ingots and make components out of them. Once you have a variety of those components, you take those components and you can actually make these blocks. Okay, so let me demonstrate some of that. So let's go to any given. Here's a large cargo container. So a large cargo container, to make a large cargo container, and we're going to use the large ship or station cargo container just for example, I need 8 components, right? A component called the computer, I need 8 of those. I need a display. I need 20 motors. I need small steel tubes. I need metal grids. I need construction components. I need interior plate. Now let's talk about some of these things. What do I need to make a computer? What do I need to make a display? Or how about motor? Small steel tubes, metal grid, construction components, and interior plates all need iron. Okay, metal grid, steel tube, large steel tube, construction components, that's all they need is iron. Interior plate needs some other stuff. So how do we discover what they need? Let's have a look. So we have production, yeah, not gonna let me do that. I was gonna. So this is a base. I know you're saying, Kenty, you're full of shit, but this really is a base. It's a base because it has everything you need to build a base. So first off, let's go to the assembler here. The reason I want to go to an assembler is because I want you to see what we can do. Okay, interior plate, what do we need? Okay, we do only need iron for interior plate, so I am full of shit. Medical components, what do we need for that? We need iron ingot, nickel ingot, silver ingot. Okay, pretty straightforward stuff. Display, there's a display. We need silicon wafers, so we need to find silicon. Iron, hey, iron. Computer, silicon wafer, and gold. Okay, so you see we need those raw materials. Raw materials through the refinery become usable materials. We take those usable materials and turn them into components. Once we have those components, then we can build our blocks and we can get on with life. Interior plate, here's a small tube. Steel plate, shielding components, this is a mod. Small steel tube, large steel tube, solar cells, gold, platinum, and silicon. Okay, platinum, obviously you don't need very much platinum. Okay, so this is a 1 would be 1 ingot. Okay, just so you know where that is. So for every solar cell I need 0.01. So for 1 platinum ingot I can build 100 solar cells. Okay, to put that in. So silicon wafer, but I need 1.2 wafers to make 1 solar cell. So needless to say, to make solar cells you have to have a lot of these. Gold, I need 0.03. Okay, so not very much. So where do we find all these different materials? Now here's the key. We can find platinum anywhere except planets. It's on the moon, but not on planets. So if your planet has a legitimate atmosphere, you're not going to find platinum. So that's one thing that does not exist on the planet surfaces is platinum. You have to go out into space and find that. You can also find it on the moons. So if there's not an atmosphere, you'll find it somewhere. Silicon you can find pretty much anywhere. So there's 10 different elements, okay, including ice. The neat thing about ice, you don't have to do anything with it. It's ice. Okay, you can use it as is. You mine it, boom, it's ready to use. You don't have to have a refinery. So that's convenient because you might just die before you could build your refinery. So the 2 critical things that you need to make everything happen is a refinery and an assembler. If you do not have those things, you are doomed. That's why pretty much every survival game, in one way or another, any kind of spawn ship or that sort of thing, you always have a refinery and a assembler. Okay. You also need a medical bay. Okay, so there are those as well. But for the most part, even if you die, your game is going to let you respawn, and you can get around that. So, knowing what these different things, here we go: iron, silicon, and nickel. Excuse me. When you get into armaments, you're going to need magnesium at some point. Magnesium, And these are fun when you really get into missiles, because now you need magnesium, you need uranium, fun stuff, platinum, there's another use of platinum. Okay, again, platinum not very much, so it goes a long ways, but you need it. So, alright, fertile soil, gravel. So you can change gravel into fertile soil. Medical components, nickel, silver. If we look at some of your tools that you need, here's some basic tools. So what do we need? Iron, nickel, cobalt, and silicon. For a weapon, iron and nickel. Let's look at a welder. Iron, nickel, cobalt. Iron, nickel, silver. Okay, for either of the tanks. Tanks, gotta have tanks. But, so, I think that goes, I totally went off on the diatribe. Alright, so, let's briefly go through these. I'm not going to go in any order, at least not right now, and we'll come back. Okay, so we're going to go over this a couple times. And I've got the sun in my eyes. So, what do we have at this end? Well, you have to have a way to get stuff into your base, and we do that with connectors. This is a connector. By the way, all of this is vanilla. A lot of you have seen some of my videos, and you know I kind of go off on the deep end with mods and that sort of thing. Everything here you see is vanilla, all vanilla. So, connector. Connector, we connect that onto conveyors. This happens to be a junction which goes through the bulkhead here. How you design bulkheads is really up to you. This happens to be a heavy armor block, and that was just because that's what I had selected last. So heavy armor. Obviously the conveyors and the junctions are not nearly as solid as the armor is. So choose wisely. There's a lot of mods out there that do have like armored conveyors that you can use here. This is a sorter. Why do I have a sorter? I like to pull in cargo. So let's just say that you hook your miner up to this connector and you link it up so you're connected. So green to green. What happens? The answer is nothing. Why? Because there's nothing that will tell this thing to move cargo from point A to point Z. There's just nothing there. Sorters don't just sort, they can pull. Okay, so there's a drain all function that you can use, and if you want to know more about storage, sorting, and all that sort of thing, there was a video series I did about a sorting system, and that goes into probably more detail than you ever wanted to know, but that's back there, and that uses pretty much vanilla stuff as well. So our sorter we can set to drain all, and it becomes a pull-in functionality, which means I connect my miner onto my connector. This thing pulls everything in, so everything that's not bolted down in the miner, and probably including some stuff you wanted like uranium and ice. So the only thing it will not pull out of is things that need those materials. For example, it will not pull uranium ingots out of your reactors. It will not pull ice out of your gas generators. Okay, or still called oxygen generators, even though it's a gas generator. It's not just generating oxygen, it's generating hydrogen. Therefore, it is a gas generator, not an oxygen generator. While it generates oxygen, it also generates hydrogen. So calling it an oxygen generator is not entirely accurate. So, connector onto conveyor system. Going through the bulkhead here using a junction then into the sorter, which is actually going to pull everything in through another conveyor into our containers. You need containers. Now, how many containers you want to use is really up to you. It all depends on what you are intending on doing. Is this going to be a giant supply station? That's entirely up to you. What do you want to do? This is a small container up here, for example. So large container, small container. Because this is a large grid, those are the only options you have. On the small grids, you actually have a large, medium, and small container. A small container is basically a 1 by 1. Oh, excuse me. 1 by 1 by 1. A medium container is 3 by 3 by 3, and a large container is 5 by 5 by 5 on a small grid. Okay, so you have a small, medium, large container available. On the large grids, you only have a large and a small. The large is 3 by 3. The small is 1 by 1 by 1. Okay, so for example. Now, in this case, what I did was run a junction out the bottom and then connected on to another junction, which is going into this assembler assembly. Think about that one, assembler assembly. What do I have here? So I've got two assemblers stacked end to end, and then this bottom one is just for example, so you can see this is, of course, what an assembler looks like. Stock assembler there. And this bottom assembler has 4 speed modules on it. So you have 3 modules available. There's the efficiency module, a yield module, and then a speed module. Now, where do these come in? The speed module is for your assembler. Okay, that's really all you can do with that. And then you can use the efficiency modules, which will reduce the power consumption a bit. So you can have up to 4 modules on an assembler. Okay. The advantages of running your assemblers end to end, not side to side, but end to end, is if you have them end to end, as in connected assembler to assembler end to end, then there is what's called a cooperative mode. So if you queue something up in the number 1 assembler, or really any of them, then they will share the burden. So even though you queue it up in one, the others will actually take part in making those things. So you can get a lot of speed out of that. So whenever you're doing your builds, I recommend very highly figure out a way to run your assemblers end to end. That can help you in the long run. All right, let's go to the back side here just to see these other 2 modules. Now this is a refinery here, and we'll jump back to the other side here shortly. This is your power module, your efficiency module. Down here is the yield module. Now, what's a yield module do? We talked about the efficiency module in basically reducing power consumption. So basically, whatever this thing is attached to is going to use a percentage less power to do the same thing it would without it. So let's just say, these are arbitrary numbers, you can look these up. The reactor uses 100% of its power requirement, right? So if I put this thing on here, I'm going to get a reduction in power requirement for it to function and do what it does. So let's say this gives me a 33% boost, which means now that refinery is going to do the same thing, but on 66% of my normal power, meaning I don't use as much power for it to do what it does. So these things can be a good thing. If you're struggling with power, uranium is out there. Reactors are expensive to build, but once you have them built, then they can be your friend. So do you really need to worry about the power? It's kind of one of those 6 and 1/2 dozen the others. Saving power is a good thing. On the other side of that equation is, do you really save enough to make it worth building these? Now, these modules aren't hideously expensive, so they are to your advantage to use them, but they do cost resources. Sometimes those resources are extremely valuable. So maybe you don't want to do that right away. But still, design your builds so you have these things end to end and room enough so you can come back in and put these things on later. You can always build modules on. What does a yield module do? Well, let's just say, and I'm rattling numbers off the top of my head here, so don't quote me on these. You can look these all up. How much ore does it take to make an ingot? And there are ratios that are published in the game. So what happens with this efficiency or this yield module here is it will take less ore to make an ingot. That's the whole idea behind it. So if you're not worried about power, then having 4 yield modules on here means the ore that you dump into this refinery is actually going to be really nicely boosted. Very, very efficient process, which means your yield from ore into ingots is going to be quite a bit more. So, definitely a useful thing. When you don't have the resources yet and all you have is your singular refinery, then you gotta do with what you gotta do. Whatever you have. Power. We've got 3 different types of power in the game. Okay, we have solar panels, green power. All you need is the sun. Preferably pointed at the sun. Okay, so these panels, you can see we've got 2 greens of 4, which means, okay, my sun is down there. So these things are at an awkward angle. So they are running at about 50%. So at least 50% of their power generating capability. In the standard game, this is a large grid solar panel. It can produce 120 kilowatts. Okay, 120 kilowatts. So this means this panel and this panel are running at above 60 kilowatts. Okay, so they are producing or capable of producing at least 60 kilowatts. 2 green lights, right? So 30 kilowatts per green light. Okay, so we have reached at least the 50% mark, because if it's 49, it's not going to be lit on that second one. Okay, so green power. Batteries. Batteries are a bit expensive. Why are batteries expensive? Because you have to make power cells and some of the other devices that go into these. So batteries can be a bit pricey. I love batteries. Why do I love batteries? Because batteries, even though they take a whole boatload of energy to charge them up, they actually can output a lot more power than your typical reactor. Your reactor goes to 100% and that's it. That's all you got. Batteries, you can draw a lot. 10 megawatts, I believe. Let's have a look-see. Maximum stored power, 1 megawatt hour. Current output, it's not saying how much it is, but max output, 4 megawatts. Okay, so comparatively to our reactor, 300 megawatts, but for our small stuff, like our small reactors, which are into the 15 megawatts, then 4 batteries can actually output the same amount as our reactor. Okay, our small reactor. So batteries can be a good thing. You can draw an awful lot of energy off of a battery and keep yourself up and running. So if you're building like an ion drive ship or something like that. Okay, reactors. Reactor obviously needs uranium. Okay, a reactor will do you absolutely nothing without uranium. So large reactors and small reactors. I did not build a small reactor on here. Conveyor, what I wanted to demonstrate here is a conveyor system. Okay, so everything being interconnected by a conveyor system. Why do you want to do that? Well, for example, Mr. Miner hooks up out here and it has uranium ore. The uranium ore ends up into this container here, and we pull that ore right over here into our refinery, and we turn that into uranium ingots. And we store those uranium ingots back over here into the container. My reactor can pull those uranium ingots from either the refinery or the container right straight inside and use them. So why do we want to have all this interconnection? Because if you don't, you have to move it by hand. How do you know when your reactor runs out? Well, oh shit, it turned red. Not the time to discover you're out of uranium. So the nice thing about having your entire conveyor system interconnected is it will pull that automatically. In fact, it will steal all of the uranium it can find until it's full. Okay? Pulls it very slowly, but it's there. So, reactors and a conveyor system that's entirely connected. And you can see I've got this entirely connected through, including my armaments, which we'll get here in a minute. All right, gaseous system. We have, let me flip over to the other side here. So your gaseous system here is dependent upon, you need a generator. Okay, so this is a, they call it an oxygen generator. It's really a gas generator. So we have the capability of generating those gases. We have oxygen tanks and we have hydrogen tanks. So with this system interconnected as it is, then we can draw everything we need. So for example, this thing here, the oxygen generator, can pull ice all the way from our container at the far end, as long as I have a completely integrated, interconnected conveyor system. So let's demonstrate that. Okay, see, this is yellow. What does yellow mean? Yellow means I have power, I do not have ice. If you see this turn green, I have ice, I do not have a draw. In other words, it's at idle. If you see this turn over to this aqua color, very similar to what you see here, then it is in operation. Okay, so I am going to cheat just a little bit. And Shift F10. We're going to go in and find some ice. And I'm going to spawn 10,000 of those. That's pretty big. So, click T. Okay, my inventory is large enough. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to come over to our connector. So we're pretending that we're a miner here. I'm going to do an I for inventory. I want to find that. So here's the connector. I want to find my large cargo container, okay, which is on the other side of the sorter. So I'm going to drag my ice in. I'm going to actually put it into the container. Now watch what happens. Bing! Where did it go? Zoom. Okay, what did I tell you about this thing here? Okay, so yellow means I have power, I don't have any ice. Green means I have ice, but I have no draw. This cayenne, we'll call that cayenne, means we have ice and we are making gas. Okay? So, what did we see? What do we see? We see this one went from 1 dot to 2 dots. So just for fun, let's see what this is doing. So this is filling 2.9%. Obviously the hydrogen tank. So this is, it's moving a little bit. So 2.5 million liters. 2.5 million liters. What about our oxygen tank? Let's go ahead and look at our oxygen tank. Where is our oxygen tank at? We're at 82%, so we just had the third light go up. This has 100,000 liters. It went up pretty quickly there, provided we have enough enough ice to make it all the way to the top, which the answer is no. So we turn yellow again. So we're going to do the same thing again. Just because. Sorry, punching the wrong buttons. Spawn, more ice. T to pick up. Let's do that again. That way we have a little bit more ice. Alright, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to come to our connector here, do an inventory. We're going to find our large cargo container. We're going to put our 20,000 of ice in there, and it's going to go poof and disappear. Why does that do that? Because the oxygen generator, the gas generator, steals it all. But it can only steal it all if it's connected. So this is another reason why you want to make sure you have a fully integrated conveyor system. So I put it in here, and it magically ends up here. It can only do that if it has a fully integrated system. So that one went to 100%. This, just because hydrogen generates so much more slowly. Let's have a look-see at this one again. There you go, 4%. Wow, that takes a long time. So, reactors, batteries, power, refineries. So let's look over here. What do we have? Medical. You need medical. So, as you can see on my thing here, we have oxygen at 80%. We have power at 18%. So we're under 25. That's why it turned red. And we have hydrogen here at 95. So, how do we do this? We need a medical thing. I'm going to highlight the little computer here, push T. So, you will always get power from a powered medical station. Always get power from a powered medical station. How do you get oxygen and hydrogen from a medical station like I just did here? You have to have it connected in. So what we have is this conveyor goes over to the top here, but it's also connected onto the hydrogen tank and the oxygen tank. So because gases can travel through the conveyors as well, I have this plumbed in, and it's working. Likewise, your cryo chamber here is plumbed into the bottom of the oxygen thing. That was just convenient. It does not have to plug into an oxygen generator. It can plug in anywhere in your conveyor system. So this just happened to be a convenient port, so I used it. So your cryo chamber, if you're in the cryo chamber and you lose oxygen, you're gonna die. So you want to make sure you have your cryo chambers plumbed in. Why do you need cryo chambers? Well, cryo chambers were an interesting way that Keen basically prevented problems. When you were in a multi-server environment and that server went down, if you were not in a cryo chamber, you would lose all your inventory. And that's true even today. Nobody really knows, can really explain why that happens the way it does, but it does. So, cryo chambers are the way that you can basically save yourself within the confines of the game, and when it reloads, or when you reload into this world, then you have what you had. So cryo chambers are a good thing. So medical. Alright, let's talk briefly about armaments because I put those up here. So this is a large ship or station missile turret over here. This is a large station or ship Gatling turret. And down here is an interior turret. Now, the problem with an interior turret is it does not connect in to the conveyor system. It doesn't connect. The only way to put anything into it is to come up here and touch this little handle. So this is your magazine. This uses the same ammo as your rifle. Okay, so that's the 5.56 millimeter ammunition. That's what this guy uses. So if you're making it for your rifle, you're also making it for the interior turrets. They are automatic. They have an AI, so they have different settings that you can play with. I won't go into that here just because that's not really the purpose of this particular video. Okay, what do you need here? Well, we need the 25 millimeter ammo here. Okay, and this is definitely a flak gun, very similar to the flanks cannon that you see on U.S. naval warships and Japanese warships, in fact. So, 25 millimeter. What do we need for missiles? That is your 200 millimeter missile. So these things get pretty expensive, but they both, as you can see, tap into the conveyor system, so they can actually pull from containers. So if you have those ammunitions being made, so being made in your assembler, then your assembler can store them, and then as the weapon systems need them, it can draw it in. And an antenna. We need an antenna. Now, a base being a base, you may actually need to enclose it. If you're on a moon, obviously we are oxygen breathing creatures, so having an oxygen environment would be a good thing. So doors, windows, bulkheads, roofs, overheads, that sort of thing might come in handy. Do you need it to be armored? Not necessarily. This is actually an interior block, but you could use it for exterior if you're not really worried about armor. So windows. Obviously this is open and exposed, but this was just for demonstration. So an airlock here, 2 doors. Obviously they're open, but 2 doors. So outer door, inner door. That way you're not affecting the environment inside. We have air vents. So normally air vents would pressurize an area, drawing oxygen, obviously. So as long as you have an oxygen tank, I think it's within 20 blocks, something like that. If you get it too far away, then it no longer draws from that. You have to have an oxygen tank a little closer. So if you ever run into those problems where this turns green but it's not doing anything, and you know without the shadow of a doubt, pardon me, I'm doing the total yawns here. If you know that your air vent here is connected and you have no doubt in your mind that your conveyor system is working just fine, trust me, just put an oxygen tank somewhere within 20 blocks of that and it'll probably go for you. So obviously if it's yellow, it's exposed to the world, to the outside air, so you're not in a sealed environment, so obviously it's not going to work. So once you get that one thing to turn green, you know you're sealed. Now you just need oxygen to draw from. Alright, so let's go over some of these things in a little more base idea. Okay? Why are we building a base? And do we need to build a base in a particular place? The answer is kind of yes and no. You can build a base anywhere. Do you want to build a base at just some haphazard random location? No, probably not. You want your base to be somewhere close to resources, Why is that? Well, the farther away those resources are, the farther you have to go to get them, the farther you have to hike them back so you can put them into the system and make it work. So, what do we need at our base? We need a good location, 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 location. We need a good location. If you're setting down on a planet, then you want that location to be, look at the ground. Those dark splotches on the ground of any planet mean there are resources here. So you might want to stick your base, even if it's a basic, just starting base. Basic your thought process is, hey, I've got resources to my northwest, I've got resources to the east, and I've got resources to the south. Let's just set up my base right smack dab in the middle of all three of those. I can draw from all three of those, and hey, this is a pretty good place. If you happen to have ice somewhere close to that, that's all the better. Then magically you have all those resources. So, location. Probably the first two considerations that you have to have, medical, you have to have a respawn point. Are you going to die at some point in your survival series? Yes, absolutely. It's guaranteed. You're just going to be wandering around and then, oh shit, I forgot oxygen. I'm dead. Okay? It happens to everybody. Even people who have 3,700 hours in this game. It happens. So, medical. Medical gives you a place to spawn. The two most important things, remember I was saying earlier, the things you absolutely have to survive are your refinery and your assembler. You really can't go anywhere without those two. If you are intending on doing a survival series of any kind, playing the game in a survival mode, you will not get anywhere without those two items. You have to have enough components to build your refinery. Why do you need a refinery? Well, all of the materials in the universe will not help you if you don't have a way to convert those from raw materials into usable materials. So your refinery is absolutely critical. Maybe you will start out with one. In fact, in most scenarios where you start in a spawn type of a craft, a spawn vessel, you're going to only have that one refinery. That's what you start out with. The assembler is your friend. You'll always have an assembler on one of those spawn ships. So when you get down to the planet, you can either take it out or build another one. You know, build enough components that you can build another one. But either way, just like having raw materials with no way to convert it into usable materials is kind of pointless, so is having usable materials with no way to convert those usable materials into components. Because ultimately, you're building blocks. Blocks, whatever they happen to be, need components. If you don't have those components, no way you're going to build it. So, assembler and refinery, the two very most important blocks that you have in the game. Medical obviously gives you a place to spawn, so you can't do without a medical, at least not for very long. You're going to die at some point, so having a medical bay. So that's pretty important. Don't rip your old medical bay apart until you have a place to put your new one. And make sure you don't get sidetracked like me. I can't count the number of times I'm like, oh yeah, I need to move that medical bay, and I will take my medical bay apart and then get sidetracked on something else. Oh, hey, I need to build this here. Let's put this bulkhead here. And then all of a sudden I die and I don't have a medical bay. But I took my other one apart. Oh, shit. I didn't put the old one back together. The nice thing about most blocks, most systems, for example, the refinery. You can take the refinery apart and you have all of your components. Now that's not true with everything, but the assemblers will disassemble down to their basic components, so you can basically take it apart, move it somewhere else, put it back together. Refinery is the same thing. Your medical bay is the same way. Batteries, don't know about this. For a long time, if you destroyed a battery, all of the power cells would turn into scrap metal. I think they changed that. I think you get some of your power cells back now. So a lot of things, experiment with it as you're taking things apart. Look and see what you get back. But a lot of times when you're grinding stuff down, you get an awful lot of components. Speaking of grinding down, so you see these red here. I have a Spurt, which is actually Space Pirate Class 4G frigate. So right now I have cargo ships turned on. That's because I was doing some testing earlier and playing with those. So if you are daring, then you can go and actually disarm some of these things and steal their components. So there's more than one way to get components. One way, of course, is to take your miner, go get some materials, refine things until you have components. Or you go pirate a pirate ship and dismantle the whole thing, and then you have a boatload of components. So there's, as they say, multiple ways to skin a cat. Probably some irony there, a cat talking about skinning a cat. Imagine that. Alright, so what's the first things that you want to have in your base? That would be a refinery and an assembler. What's the second thing you want to have on your base? Medical. The third thing you want to have on your base? Containers. Of course, in the midst of that, we cannot discount the fact that we need power. Can't get by without power. So maybe the ultimate ubiquitous thing is power. So you have to have some form of power, whether that be batteries. You can go a long ways on batteries, go a long ways on solar, but ultimately having some uranium in a reactor. Now, a reactor is pretty expensive. What do I mean by that? Let's have a look. Power blocks. Large reactor. Here we go. Large reactor. 75 computers. 20 motors. Reactor components. So, this is a large reactor. 2,000 reactor components. Okay? You're going to be making stuff for a long time trying to build a large reactor. Large reactor, 100 megawatts though. That's a lot of power. It's not like you need 20 large reactors to make things work. Superconductor conduits, 100. Why are superconductor conduits an issue? Because superconductor conduits need platinum. Okay, so fun. Large steel tube, need iron. That's all I need there. Metal grid, construction components. All of those. Whoops, sorry. Power blocks. Scroll down. So computers. We saw we needed silicon and iron. Motors. I don't remember what that one was. Reactor components. Don't remember what those were. Superconductor. I know you need platinum. Platinum and gold, I think. Large steel tube needs iron. Metal grid needs iron. Construction components needs iron. Steel plate needs iron. So those are easy. Iron is abundant. You can find iron. Gold, not so abundant. Platinum, if you are crash landed on a planet, you're gonna suck because no platinum on a planet. It is elsewhere, and you have to find it. So, some of the joys of space engineers. So, power. couple variety of methods. Solar is probably your cheapest, most economical form of power. The materials are out there: silicon, iron. I'm trying to remember what else you needed. I think silicon and iron. Let's look. All blocks. What do we need? Solar panel. Solar cell. Okay, so we got to figure out what that one is. Computer, large steel tube, construction component, steel plate. Okay, so large steel tube, construction component, steel plate are all iron to make those. Let's look at our assembler. Production, solar cell. We need gold, silicon, very, very little gold. Oh, and platinum. Darn it. Need platinum now. Didn't used to need platinum. That could be a mod. Don't think so, but that could be a mod. So here's our superconductors. Oh no, I'm wrong. Look, you don't need that. So you don't need platinum there. Motors, cobalt, nickel, and iron. So easy. What was something else? Reactor components. Silver, gravel. Gravel's really common. Okay, just start mining stone. There's your gravel. And iron. So silver, obviously you need silver for a lot of things. So silver is not abundant, but it's out there. So definitely get it when you got it. Thruster components also needs platinum. Antennas. Oh, metal grid. Metal grid was the one that needed all the different things. So iron, nickel, and cobalt. So there's iron. Girders are iron. Interior plate. Steel plate is iron. And tubes, large and small. So, knowing what all these different things need is an art. So, power, whether it be from batteries, reactors, or solar cells. When you're first starting out, usually those solar cells are your best friend because they'll let you charge your battery, which you probably already have on your ship. If you crash landed, then most likely you still have some of those intact, and you can plumb them in. As long as they're connected on in some way, then you'll be able to use them. So depending on where you are, obviously if you have a oxygen-rich environment, then you don't need to worry about any of these gaseous things unless you need to fill up your various ships, or medical in this case. So obviously hydrogen and oxygen are used by your jetpack. So having some hydrogen production, some oxygen storage, and hydrogen storage is important. That way you can refill your pack at any time. Alright. Antenna. What do we need an antenna for? Antenna allows you to do any kind of remote control. You have to have an antenna. One of the other things that if you really get into building, so not so much if you are downloading buildings or spacecraft craft from the workshop, excuse me again, then not so important. But when you're building and you lose track of things and you're OCD like I am and you want to make sure everything is named, dare I say, appropriately, then your antenna is your best friend. Why do I say that? Because that checkbox that says show on HUD will only show the information if you have an active antenna. So an antenna is pretty important. The other thing you can use, I tend to use antennas rather than beacons. Beacon is just a beacon. It's just a radio beacon. So even though it's much more efficient in how it does things, for example, a beacon turned out to 50 kilometers, 50,000 meters, uses 20 kilowatts. I think it's 20 kilowatts. Whereas an antenna at 50 kilometers is 200 kilowatts. Okay, but your antenna can also broadcast things, whereas your beacon only broadcasts the beacon. So whatever you name your beacon is what it is. So beacon is much more efficient on energy, but doesn't really have the flexibility. It's not nearly as useful. So some base thoughts. When you have your containment area, you want to build an airlock. And what I mean by that is an outer door and an inner door. And the reason for that is you'll only have one door open at a time. So if I'm coming in, then the inner door is what's sealing the environment inside. So obviously I don't want all the pressurization, the air, to come explosively out. So I will open the outer door, which will only exhaust the air in my airlock. Why is it called an airlock? Well, it locks the air. Ponder that. So I open the outer door. This inner door is what's holding the air in. Then I close the outer door. So now I have a door between space and the inner area. And then I open this door, which of course is going to explosively compress this. So a vacuum area is now not a vacuum. So airlock. Okay, you want to make sure you design in your airlocks. What do you need in your space? Well, whether it be windows around, bulkheads around, whatever, you just want to make sure you have your space sealed. What all do you need in that space? Medical bay? But your medical bay doesn't need to be sealed necessarily. So your industrial areas like your gas generation, your refineries, your assemblers don't necessarily have to be inside this contained area, inside your environmental space. They can be outside just as easily. You put a junction in, it's like what you see up here at the roof, and go outside. You know, as long as you can plumb it into your conveyor system, everything's good to go. This is really just for you, basically. So, airlocks, pretty important stuff. Bulkheads, windows, I like a lot of windows, and air vents. Air vents connected into your conveyor system, connected into oxygen, will be able to pressurize an environment. So let's demonstrate that for you. So what we're going to do here is change just a few things. I'm going to go to number 3 and number 4. I'm going to chop that one there and put that there. I'm going to chop that one there and put that there. Why did I do that? Because I want to create a bulkhead through here. Alright, I'm going to cheat for a second. What did I do? I turned on mirroring, is what that was. That way I had a complete bulkhead there. Alright, and here's the other thing we're going to do is create a slope. I'm going to put a corner just because I think it looks a little better. I'm going to turn that slope sideways and go down, and we're going to go into P and change colors. So we kind of keep our tiger motif going here. Do the same thing over here. My corner pieces down here. Alright, we're going to do two things here. We're going to put a window in here. So this window flat right there. Alright, what did we see happen there? Because I'm mirroring, that actually put the glass on both sides simultaneously. So what you see here is, if you see that air vent, we just went to 4 green. What does 4 green mean? 4 green means we are at 100% pressurization. So those are percentage. Every 25% we add another green. If the first one goes green and does not do anything, in fact, let's go ahead and demonstrate that. I'm going to nuke the tank. Let me turn off mirroring just for sake of that. Okay, I'm going to cheat some more here. So for those of you who are familiar with... Oh, what did I do? I just put 1,000 ice into, or actually 1,000,000 ice, I think it was, into that container. Okay, so you see my oxygen generator went active. This thing is still at 100%. But let's do some things. You remember I did not close the inner doors. Okay, so we just exhausted our air. So we see this turned yellow, meaning I am open to space somewhere. Okay, let's go ahead and be intelligent and close our airlocks as they are supposed to be closed, inner and outer doors when not in use. Oh. Alright. It's making a liar out of me. Oh, actually, the reason it's doing that is because the oxygen generator can actually generate enough oxygen to pressurize the space. But if we did not have the oxygen generator there, then it would not have pressurized. I was going to try and demonstrate, so I thought, you know, nuking that container there. Alright. Let me find my oxygen tank again. Oxygen tank. Alright. And get the oxygen tank. Don't want that one. So oxygen tank. That's a black tank. I don't want a black tank. I need an orange tank. There we go. Bink. Alright. Connected back in. Alright, so I wanted to demonstrate that and didn't actually manage to do it. So this is our entirely enclosed environment here, including weapons protection, an airlock, so an outer door and an inner door. We have our gaseous generation systems comprised of a oxygen generator, which is really a gas generator. We have an oxygen tank and a hydrogen tank. So with those 3 items, we can hook that into a medical bay, medical room, and repressurize our suit at any time, just by going up to that computer on the medical bay and pushing T and refuel you. Power. In this case, I have all 3 forms of power. I have solar, I have batteries, and I have a reactor. So you notice my batteries are cycling here. They will drop down a little bit, recharge, go all the way back up to 100%, and then discharge again. We have our refinery. You absolutely need a refinery. There's no way to take raw materials and turn them into usable materials without a refinery. You need a refinery. And then assembler is our friend. The only way we can take those usable materials and turn them into the components we need is via an assembler. And as always, you need storage. You never realize how much room you need until you don't have any. So storage, storage, storage. You need storage. Connectors make things easy, so when you're out with your miner, it gives you an easy way to connect in and move all that stuff, because moving stuff by hand bites. So, basic base tutorial, right? Basic ideas for the base. What do you need? All of it. You need all of it. But what do you start off with? If you have nothing else, obviously you got to have power. Can't argue that one. Everything is based on power. Everything needs power. Even your medical bay needs power. So once you have power, even if it's just a little, then your refinery, because that'll take those raw materials and turn them into usable materials. Then you need that assembler, because then the assembler will take those usable materials and turn them into components. Once you have components, you're home free. You can do whatever you want to do. Okay, I've exceeded my hour allotment, as is my norm. So this is Kenty Tiger signing off from the base building idea, and we will see you next time.